Hello and a very warm welcome to this special edition of World Panorama on Rajya Sabha Television. I'm your host, Frank Pereira. A lot has happened in the year 2014, from the US to Australia and from Russia to South America. We'll bring you up to date with all the significant developments that have taken place around the world over the next half an hour. So sit back and enjoy the show. Well, we'll begin this edition with some tragic news from across the border. It was one of the most horrific attacks the world has ever seen. An attack that made stomachs churn. An attack that will hopefully make Pakistan take notice and change the way it deals with terrorists. 142 people, including 132 children, were killed in an attack by Pakistani Taliban fighters on a military-run school in Peshawar in Pakistan's northwest. Explosions and gunfire rang out as 7 armed men attacked the Army Public School on December 9th in one of the bloodiest attacks in Pakistan's history. 10 staff members were also killed. Most of the younger pupils escaped the school, but the senior students were not so lucky. The deadly attack triggered shock and outrage across the world. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif called it a national tragedy. Shell-shocked survivors described the attack as nothing short of mayhem. The attackers came dressed in paramilitary uniforms looking for people to kill. All 7 attackers were later killed in an operation. Let's take a look now at the timeline of the attack. The attacks began at 10:30 a.m. local time, Pakistan. At 12:11 p.m., the Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. At 12:25 p.m., the evacuation process began at the school. At 3:47 p.m., loud explosions were heard in and around the school. At 5:35 p.m., rescue operations continued, where 10 more teachers were rescued. At 6:14 p.m., the death toll climbed to 1 more as a child succumbed in hospital. And at 7:12 p.m., the operation finally ended with the last gunman being killed. Well, let's move on now from the gruesome attack in Peshawar to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foreign policy. Right from the moment he took over as the Prime Minister, the Narendra Modi government tried to project a distinctive urgency and purpose in its foreign policy. It called its efforts fast-track diplomacy that was proactive, strong and sensitive. In the first 100 days, a whirlwind outreach initiative towards Southeast Asia took Modi to Bhutan, Nepal and then Japan. This was followed by trips to the United States, Myanmar, Australia and Fiji. Neighbourhood first was the key pillar of the initiatives. Modi's inauguration as Prime Minister itself saw all the heads of government of South Asian countries landing in Delhi. Subsequent actions underscored the government's focus on an Act East policy, a takeoff on India's Look East policy formulated by Narasimha Rao's government in the 90s. To counter China's naval activity in Indian Ocean, the Modi administration introduced Project Mausam, a work in progress. The project will focus on ancient trade and cultural linkages from Southeast Asia to East Africa. Other innovative ideas included the introduction of para-diplomacy. Equally notable was the Prime Minister's reception in his efforts to reach out to the Indian diaspora in the US. From India's diplomatic push, let's move on to the aggressive push of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, where the militants spread their tentacles with ease and instill fear in the people. Well, in January 2014, the worsening turmoil in Syria and Iraq and the leadership vacuum provided the backdrop for the march of the Islamic State. The jihadi fighters captured Fallujah and parts of Ramadi in Iraq while setting the stage for a gradual expansion in the Anbar province along the Syrian border. In June, the Iraqi forces were completely routed. Mosul, the northern Iraqi city with over 1 million inhabitants, was conquered. The same month, the group released an audio recording announcing that the Caliphate of the Islamic State had been established. The terrorist group had now become a bureaucratic organization that controls thousands of square miles and governs millions of people. But even as it sought to establish a legal legitimacy for its existence, the Islamic State sought notoriety through sheer savagery and brutality. Horrendous accounts of slavery have become from women belonging to the Yazidi community. The terrorists laid siege to Mount Sinjar, that was home to the Yazidis, carrying out unimaginable atrocities. The group carried out beheadings at regular intervals throughout the year. Other victims included an unknown number of Syrians, Lebanese soldiers, Kurds, 2 American journalists, 1 American and 2 British aid workers. Videos of the gruesome beheadings were posted on social media. Experts say that the publicized beheadings are only a small proportion of a larger total of people they have killed. Well, that was not it for the region. A few hundred kilometers west, another conflict left over 2,000 dead and around 500,000 displaced. On 8th July 2014, Israel launched a military operation which it designated Operation Protective Edge in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. Thereafter, 7 weeks of Israeli bombardment, Palestinian rocket attacks and ground fighting killed almost 2,200 people, the vast majority of them Gazans. The 7-week-long conflict saw the deadliest violence in years, punctuated by a succession of failed truces. The stated aim of the Israeli operation was to stop rocket fire from Gaza into Israel, which increased after an Israeli crackdown on Hamas in the West Bank was launched following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers. Let's take a look now at some of the key numbers with regards to the conflict. Israel carried out over 5,200 airstrikes over a period of 50 days. Hamas fired almost 4,600 rockets and mortars at Israel during the same period. Over 2,100 people were killed in Gaza. UN estimated 69% of the deaths were that of civilians. The number of civilian casualties in Israel was 6, including 1 Thai national. Apart from the already mentioned staggering figures, 67 Israeli soldiers were also killed in the conflict. There were several attempts to stop the fighting over the following weeks, including trying to achieve pauses for humanitarian reasons. There were brief respites, but none which endured. Let's take a look now at how the lives of the people in the region were affected as a result of the conflict. A total of 10,224 people were injured, including 3,106 children. 475,000 people were displaced in the 7-week-long conflict. 17,200 homes were either completely destroyed or severely damaged. And last but not the least, 58 hospitals and clinics were damaged. Meanwhile, Europe had a conflict of its own. The ongoing Crimean crisis has had a far-reaching impact. Almost a year has gone by, but there is still no solution in sight. In fact, things have only become worse. Well, it was towards the end of February 2014 that evidence started to pile up about Russia's stealth invasion in Ukraine. Then President Viktor Yanukovych was deposed in a popular movement, even as unmarked Russian troops and military equipment started taking up strategic positions in Crimea. Soon afterwards, Russia announced it had annexed Crimea. The Crimean crisis also saw at the same time protests by pro-Russian and anti-government groups in the Donetsk and Luhansk provinces. The demonstrations soon escalated into an armed conflict between the separatist forces and the Ukrainian government. On 17 July, at the height of these military exchanges, Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 was shot down over the conflict zone near Torez in Donetsk. Global powers denounced the action of Russia. In August, unmarked troops and military vehicles from Russia once again crossed into the Donbass region. Russia distanced itself from allegations of military involvement, but global powers were not convinced. The United States accused Russia of fomenting war. The West slapped retaliatory sanctions that contributed to the slide of the ruble. As the West imposed sanctions, Putin turned east, reaching out to China and India. But the sanctions had an impact on the Russian currency, prompting Putin to take drastic steps. Well, the close of 2014 marked the start of Russia's winter of discontent. Its economy stared at the twin threats of a deep recession and runaway inflation. The crisis accelerated in the second half of 2014 when investors started losing confidence in the ruble. This was largely on account of the falling prices of Russia's staple export, crude oil. In the 6 months, its crude oil prices fell nearly 50%. Russia suffered a twin blow in the form of international economic sanctions for its annexation of Crimea and military intervention in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the Western nations of engineering the economic crisis. but the developments affected consumers, companies and global financial markets in the country. The Russian stock market suffered huge value erosion. On the streets, despondent shopkeepers revised rates, while real incomes kept falling sharply for ordinary Russians. 2015 looks tough for Putin, but the Russian president is determined to revive the economy and stay in control. Well, if 2014 was tough for Putin, it was horrific for West Africa. The year marked the most widespread epidemic of Ebola in history. The effects were so drastic that the WHO is still grappling to contain it. The 2014 Ebola epidemic is the largest in history, affecting multiple countries in West Africa. Some countries have encountered difficulties in their efforts to control the epidemic. In some areas, people have become suspicious of both the government and hospitals, some of which have been attacked by angry protesters who believe either that the disease is a hoax or that the hospitals are responsible for the disease. Many of the seriously affected areas have extreme poverty with limited access to the soap and running water needed to help control the spread of the disease. 2 imported cases, including 1 death and 2 locally acquired cases in healthcare workers, were reported in the United States. The worst affected countries are Sierra Leone, Liberia and Guinea. These 3 countries have seen widespread transmission with over 19,000 cases reported. As of December 18, 2014, a total of 19,078 cases were reported across the world, out of which 12,073 were confirmed in laboratories. The death toll stands at 7,413, though the WHO believes that this figure substantially understates the magnitude of the outbreak. Meanwhile, the outbreak began in Guinea in December 2013 and then spread to Liberia and Sierra Leone. A small outbreak of 20 cases occurred in Nigeria and 1 case occurred in Senegal, both now declared disease-free. Several cases have been reported in Mali. Imported cases in the United States and Spain have led to secondary infections of medical workers but have not spread further. Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, we'll take a look at some of the biggest names to have left us in the year 2014. Stay tuned. The year-end edition of World Panorama will be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, before the break, we took a look at some of the most significant developments to have taken place in the year 2014, but that's not all. There was another event that was followed with a lot of enthusiasm, an event that kept billions glued to their television sets.
The wait for the world's biggest sporting event ended on June 12th when the FIFA World Cup got underway in the football-loving nation of Brazil. The tournament started with a bang as the host nation came from behind to beat Croatia, and since then delivered fantastic entertainment till almost every game. But the tournament was not without upsets and controversies. Such was the intensity of the World Cup that even heavyweights stumbled along the way. European giants England and Italy failed to make it past the group stages. But the biggest upset of them all was the ouster of world champion Spain. However, the tournament had already produced most number of goals in the group stages in the history of the World Cup. A total of 136 goals were scored in the group stages, with some absolutely stunning ones. The knockout stage saw the teams playing with more caution, and for the first time since the introduction of the round of 16, all the group winners advanced into the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinals, host Brazil, World Cup favourites Germany, Argentina, and the last edition's finalist Netherlands made it to the last 4. However, the hosts lost their most loved player, Neymar.
After that challenge.
The semi-final saw 2 mouth-watering clashes with Germany up against Brazil and Argentina playing against Netherlands. what followed was difficult to imagine. Argentina, on the other hand, scrapped past the Dutch on penalties. With the hosts eliminated, the crowd then supported their arch rivals and neighbours Argentina, who were up against the mighty Germans. All eyes were on Argentina's wonder boy Messi, hoping he could emulate the feat of his legendary countryman Maradona. Argentina found it tough to break the German wall as the match entered extra time. The Germans were once more crowned the world champions after a gap of 24 years.
That best team is Germany.
Messi had to be content with player of the tournament.
Well, for all of you sports buffs out there, here's a recap of all the sports news for the year 2014 in our Sports Wrap.
Now has he got it? Yes, Sri Lanka, the new champions.
Sri Lanka won the 5th edition of the ICC World 2020 by defeating India by 6 wickets in the final at Mirpur. For the first time, the tournament featured 16 teams. All 10 full members qualified automatically and were joined by 6 associate members who qualified through the 2013 ICC World 2020 qualifier. 35 matches were played at 3 different venues in Dhaka, Chittagong and Sylhet. Virat Kohli was a top scorer with 319 runs from 6 matches with an average of 106.33. South African Imran Tahir and Ehsan Malik of the Netherlands were joint highest wicket takers with 12 apiece. Incheon, South Korea was host to the 2014 edition of the Asian Games that were held between September 19th and October 4th, 2014. The Games featured 439 events in 36 sports and disciplines. Incheon was awarded the right on April 17, 2007, defeating Delhi to host the Games. The final medal tally was led by China, followed by South Korea and Japan. India finished 8th with 11 goals. 14 world and 27 Asian records were broken during the Games. The Japanese swimmer Kosuke Hagino was announced as the most valuable player. Though there were several controversies, the Games were deemed generally successful with its low price tag and with the rising standard of competition amongst the Asian nations. Roger Federer added to his legacy by helping Switzerland clinch its first Davis Cup trophy, one of the few tennis jewels to have eluded him against 9-time former champions France. The 2014 Davis Cup was the 103rd edition of the tournament between national teams in men's tennis. The final took place between the 21st and 23rd of November in Lille, France, with Switzerland winning the title for the first time, defeating host France in the final. Switzerland won the final with a scoreline of 3-1. Norwegian Magnus Carlsen was crowned the FIDE World Chess Champion 2014. He retained the title after defeating challenger Vishwanathan Anand 6.4 to 4.5 in a match played at the Winter Olympic city of Sochi. Carlsen took the lead in Game 2 with Anand immediately returning the blow in Game 3. The Norwegian took the lead again in Game 6 and managed to hold all difficulties in further games in what turned out to be one of the most exciting matches of the century. Vishy went all in Game 11, but he did not find the precise continuation in a better position. The game went from won to lost. Magnus Carlsen took the full point and with it, the title World Chess Champion 2014.
He won stage 2 and with it took control of the race lead.
Vincenzo Nibali became the first Italian to win the Tour de France since Marco Pantani in 1998. Nibali first took the yellow jersey on stage 2 after an opportunistic stage win in Sheffield. When the race hit the Alps, Nibali wasted no time in cementing his lead further. He won his 3rd stage in Chamourous and distanced all his rivals again the following day to Risol. The attrition rate at the Tour shaped the general classification. After Chris Froome crashed out of the race with a fractured wrist, Alberto Contador was quick to follow. Richie Porte and Rui Costa both suffered with respiratory infections, allowing new faces to pop up in the top 10.
Well, there were several famous personalities who passed away in 2014. People who left a mark on this world with their work. Ones that will be in our hearts for a long time. Here's remembering them.
Ariel Sharon was the former Prime Minister of Israel, holding the position from March 2001 to early 2006. At that time, Sharon suffered a series of strokes, the most serious of which put him in a coma, one that he remained in until his death. Before becoming Prime Minister, Sharon was considered the greatest field commander in the history of the Israeli army. The distinguished British actor first hit Bollywood with a role in The Great Escape in 1963. He later won accolades as a director, especially for the Oscar-winning 1982 epic Gandhi, though he was most proud of his quiet 1983 film about C.S. Lewis, Shadowlands. An Oscar-winning actor and comedian renowned for his bristling energy and incredible versatility, he portrayed roles ranging from a space alien in Mork and Mindy and a US Armed Forces radio DJ in Good Morning Vietnam, to a psychology professor in Good Will Hunting and the owner of a gay Miami club, the Birdcage. The legendary fashion designer known as the Sultan of Suave outfitted everyone from Jackie Kennedy to Oprah Winfrey in his glamorous outfits. Laura Bush said we will always remember him as the man who made women look and feel beautiful. Ben Bradley transformed and elevated the Washington Post while at its helm from 1968 to 1991, when the paper published the Pentagon Papers and broke the Watergate story. President Obama said that for Bradley, journalism was more than a profession. It was a public good vital to the country's democracy. The South African writer grappled with the injustices and politics of apartheid, including in novels such as 1981's July's People, about a race war in the suburbs where a white family is protected by a black servant. Respected for depicting the moral complexities of her country with uncommon wisdom, Gordimer won a Nobel Prize in 1991. The revered Colombian author and Nobel Prize winner transported readers with his tales of magical realism, most famously In Love in the Time of Cholera and 100 Years of Solitude. When he died, Colombia's president declared 3 days of national mourning. Philip Joel Hughes was an Australian cricketer who played domestic cricket for South Australia. He was a left-handed opening batsman who played for 2 seasons with New South Wales before making his Test debut in 2009 at the age of 20. On 25th November 2014, Hughes was knocked unconscious by a bouncer. He died on 27th November, never having regained consciousness. Real Madrid legend Alfredo Di Stefano, regarded as one of the greatest football players of all time, passed away on July 2014. Di Stefano brought home 5 straight European Cups, scoring in each final between 1956 and 1960 for the club. He played at the international level for 3 nations, but never appeared at the World Cups. With 11 Primeira Liga titles, a European Cup, a Ballon d'Or and a bronze ball to his name, Portuguese soccer superstar Eusebio passed away from heart failure at the age of 71. The East African-born striker, who began his life in severe poverty, was known as a pioneer for Africans in European soccer, with The Guardian's Paul Hayward tabbing him as Africa's first great footballer.
Going on now, the world of entertainment saw its share of controversies in 2014, from an elevator fight involving Jay-Z to allegations made against Woody Allen. Here's a review of the crucial happenings in the world of entertainment.
Mr. and Mrs. Pitt. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt finally tied the knot after 9 years together, 6 kids and more than 2 years of being engaged. The wedding was an ultra-private affair that took place on the 23rd of August, but the news was delivered only 5 days later. The world media grappled to get information about the nuptials. The venue was a small chapel at Chateau Mirabeau, the couple's private winemaking estate in the south of France. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt were paid a whopping $2 million for their wedding photos, and in true Brangelina style, it all went to charity. None of us have ever witnessed a scandal like this, involving Beyoncé, the most perfect celebrity in the world. The internet exploded when a week after the 2014 Met Gala, security footage of Solange, Beyoncé's little sister, attacking Jay-Z in an elevator was released. In the footage, Beyoncé stands to the side and does not intervene. Theories about what really went down between Solange and her brother-in-law circulated rapidly on Twitter, while Beyoncé attempted to silently shut down the rumors by posting photos of herself with her sister on Instagram. Gravity won big at the Oscars in 2014 as Alfonso Cuarón's space drama took home 7 awards, including Best Director. But it was 12 Years a Slave that won the highest honor. Going into the Oscars, the two films that seemed to be in the strongest position were Gravity and Steve McQueen's drama, with 10 and 9 nominations each. But the Matthew McConaughey starring Dallas Buyers Club was the film that got off to the quickest start, with Jared Leto taking home the statue for Best Supporting Actor, while the film also snagged Best Makeup.
South Africa.
South African beauty Rolene Strauss was crowned Miss World 2014 at a glittering ceremony in London on the 14th of December. India's Koil Rana lost out, finishing in the top 10. She, however, bagged the subtitle of Best Designer of the World. She also shared the Beauty with a Purpose title with Kenya, Guyana, Brazil and Indonesia. Miss Hungary was the runner-up in the contest, and Miss United States came in third, as an estimated billion viewers watched the finale on television around the globe. Dylan Farrow published an open letter accusing her adoptive father, Woody Allen, of sexually abusing her when she was a child. Allen repeatedly denied the allegations. This tennis match of a scandal caused an uproar and incited many Woody Allen fans to defend him on social media. Other celebrities such as Lena Dunham and Tavi Gevinson, as well as Dylan's brother Ronan Farrow and mother Mia Farrow, replied on social media by sharing their support for Dylan.
Finally, of course, since it's the festive season, we are going to leave you with celebratory images from across the world. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the show. On behalf of my team and everyone here at Rajya Sabha Television, happy holidays and have a prosperous new year.